We've all been there. Someone says something rude, cuts you off, crosses a line. You feel that fire light up in your chest, that tension tighten in your shoulders. Your first instinct? Snap back. Prove a point. Show them you're not to be messed with. But here's the truth most people miss. The real power isn't in reacting. It's in choosing not to. Let's break this down. The first thing you need to understand is this. Your emotions are valid, but they don't have to be in charge. Anger is like an alarm system. It tells you something's wrong, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it. That's your job. That's where the emotional maturity comes in. Next, learn to pause. The most powerful people in the room aren't the loudest. They're the ones who know how to stop, breathe, and assess before they act. That 2-second pause, it can save a relationship, a job, your peace of mind. Then comes the mindset shift. Not everything deserves a reaction. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Your peace is your responsibility. And that means learning how to walk away from things that are trying to pull you into chaos. Now hear this clearly. What people say or do is more about them than it is about you. That insult, it's a mirror of their own insecurity. That snide comment, a reflection of their own frustration. Don't absorb their storm. Stay rooted in your calm. Let's also talk about detachment. This doesn't mean being cold or uncaring. It means understanding where your emotional energy ends and someone else's chaos begins. You can care about people and still create space. You can disagree without being defensive. You can walk away with your dignity intact. Lastly, learn to respond with clarity, not chaos. When you stay calm, when you speak with intention, when you choose not to escalate, that's strength. That's control. And that's how you protect your power. So the next time someone tries to get under your skin, remember this. You don't owe them your anger. You owe yourself your peace. We often treat anger like a villain, something to suppress, deny, or explode with. But anger isn't the enemy. It's a signal. It's your body's way of saying, hey, something doesn't feel right. Just like physical pain warns us when something's wrong with our body, anger shows up to let us know when something's off emotionally, mentally, or even morally. But the key is this, emotions are messengers, not masters. They're not here to control us. They're here to inform us. The problem is, most of us were never taught how to read the message. We just feel the heat, the pressure, and boom, we react. Someone cuts us off in traffic, disrespects us in a conversation, or questions our intentions, and we go straight into defense mode. But what if, instead of reacting, we got curious? What if we asked ourselves, why am I feeling this right now? What is this anger trying to tell me? Because behind every flare of anger is often a deeper wound, hurt, fear, insecurity, betrayal. When we stop and really look at the emotion, it becomes less of a threat and more of a guide. Think about it. Have you ever been angry with someone, only to realize later that it wasn't really about them? Maybe it was built up stress, lack of sleep, or unresolved feelings. Emotions stack up, and when we don't unpack them, they explode at the wrong time, toward the wrong people. That's why awareness matters. When you treat anger as a messenger, you pause long enough to see what's underneath. You ask, is this really about what just happened, or is something deeper going on? That kind of awareness changes everything. Another shift that helps is realizing you don't have to act on every emotion you feel. Just because anger shows up doesn't mean you have to speak through it. You can feel it fully, acknowledge it honestly, and still choose how you respond. That's not suppression, that's wisdom. Emotional maturity isn't about never feeling anger. It's about not letting that anger drag you into behavior you'll later regret. It's about taking the wheel back from your emotions and reminding yourself, I'm in control here, not my triggers. This doesn't mean anger is wrong. Sometimes anger is righteous. Sometimes it fuels change, but even then, it needs direction. Fire can warm a home or burn it down. It all depends on how you handle it. When you choose to listen before you act, when you allow anger to inform but not dominate, you lead with strength, not chaos. So the next time you feel that rise in your chest, that pressure behind your eyes, take a breath. Ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? Then listen, not to react, but to understand. Because emotions were never meant to be dictators. They were meant to be signals, and when you learn to read them, not fear them, you take back your power quietly, confidently, and completely. We live in a world that rewards quick reactions. Say something fast, clap back faster, prove your point before someone else does. But real strength, it lives in the pause. That small, silent space between what someone does and how you choose to respond. That's where your power is. That pause is your protection, your clarity, your control. It's what separates emotional maturity from emotional chaos. When someone says something disrespectful or triggering, our natural instinct is to defend ourselves immediately. That's human. It's wired into us. But often our first response isn't our best one. It's just our loudest. And once you say something in anger, you can't unsay it. Words carry weight. Tone has power. Reactions leave marks. That's why the pause matters so much. Because in that moment of silence, you give yourself space to choose. You choose whether this deserves your energy. You choose whether this is about you or them. You choose how much of your peace you're willing to spend on someone else's chaos. Think of it like this. You are the gatekeeper of your energy. Not everyone deserves access. Not every moment deserves a reaction. That pause before you push back, that's your chance to ask yourself, is this going to help me or hurt me? Is this about resolution or just revenge? Because let's be honest, most of the time, we don't respond to solve anything. We respond to win, to prove we're right. But winning the argument at the cost of your peace is not a win at all. Pausing doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're afraid to speak up. It means you respect your energy enough to decide where it's going. It means you're not going to let someone else's behavior dictate your own. And that's real control. Not the kind that yells louder, but the kind that walks away from what isn't worth it. Anyone can explode, but it takes real power to stay grounded, to stay intentional, to stay calm. The pause also gives your brain time to shift from emotional reaction to thoughtful response. In that space, you're able to breathe, assess, and act from a place of strength instead of stress. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You begin to realize that not everything is personal. Not every disagreement is a battle, and not everyone is even talking to you. Sometimes they're arguing with their own reflection, projecting their own pain. So the next time someone pushes your buttons, resist the urge to fire back. Take a breath, step back, create that space. In that pause, ask yourself, is this worth it? And if the answer is no, walk away with your peace intact. Because the real win isn't proving your point. It's knowing you didn't let someone else pull you out of character. You kept your power. You protected your energy. And that's how you rise, quietly, firmly, and without apology. Peace isn't just a feeling. It's a form of power. And in a world that constantly pulls at your attention, challenges your boundaries, and tries to provoke a reaction, peace becomes one of your most valuable assets. The hard truth is that not everything and everyone deserves access to you. Your energy is limited, and where you invest it will determine the quality of your life. That's why learning to protect your peace is not just self-care, it's self-respect. So many of us were raised to believe that we have to respond to everything, that silence means weakness, that ignoring someone means they've won. But that mindset keeps you trapped in cycles of conflict, draining your emotional reserves for things that don't matter. Not everything needs your voice. Not every comment requires correction, and not every person deserves a piece of your mental space. Silence is not retreat, it's strategy. It says, I see what's happening here, but I'm not giving this my energy. Think about how often we lose sleep replaying arguments in our head, obsessing over what we should have said, what they meant, how unfair it was, and for what. Most of the time, the person who disturbed your peace has already moved on while you're left carrying the weight. That's why you have to learn to let things pass through you without letting them stay. You're not a storage unit for someone else's projections or disrespect. Protecting your peace starts with recognizing your triggers and setting boundaries around them. It means being intentional about who you allow into your emotional space. It's not about cutting everyone off or becoming cold. It's about choosing your battles wisely. You're not ignoring problems, you're deciding what's worth solving and what's worth walking away from. There will be people who mistake your silence for weakness. Let them. Your peace doesn't need to be explained. Your calm doesn't need to be justified. When you don't react, it unsettles people who feed off of chaos. And that's okay. Your job isn't to soothe their discomfort, it's to guard your own well-being. Responding with anger or frustration might give you a momentary release, but it rarely brings lasting satisfaction. True peace comes from knowing you chose yourself over drama, that you didn't let someone else dictate how your day would go. Every time you choose silence over conflict, restraint over reaction, and boundaries over burnout, you affirm your own worth. You remind yourself that not every fight is yours to fight. Not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every situation requires your presence. Peace is a decision you make daily. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. So when the noise gets loud, when the bait is obvious, and when your ego wants to rise, pause. Protect your peace like the priceless asset it is, because once you start treating it that way, the world begins to treat you differently too. You stop being reactive and you start being rooted. That's when you know you've mastered your calm. One of the biggest emotional traps we fall into is taking other people's behavior personally. Someone snaps at you, ignores you, criticizes you unfairly, and instantly your mind starts spinning. What did I do? Why did they treat me like that? What's wrong with me? But here's the truth you have to hold on to. People's behavior is almost always a reflection of them, not you. How someone chooses to act, speak, or treat others says far more about their internal world than it does about yours. When someone disrespects you, it's not a measure of your worth. It's a mirror showing their own pain, insecurity, or lack of emotional control. People who are at peace with themselves don't go around causing chaos for others. People who feel secure and whole don't need to put others down to feel taller. Their reaction may involve you, but it's not rooted in you. It's rooted in what's unresolved inside them. The mistake we often make is internalizing their actions. We absorb it. We take it home with us. We let it stew in our minds. But what if you could step back and see it for what it is? A reflection, a projection, an attempt to hand you their baggage. The healthiest response isn't to carry it, it's to recognize that it's not yours to hold in the first place. This isn't about dismissing accountability. If you've hurt someone or made a mistake, own it. Growth requires that. But if someone mistreats you out of nowhere, if they gaslight, belittle, or lash out, don't go on a guilt trip trying to justify their bad behavior. That's not humility. That's self-betrayal. You can be kind and still refuse to be treated poorly. You can be understanding without making excuses for people who continually cross your boundaries. The more you realize that other people's actions are rooted in their own experiences, wounds, or conditioning, the more you stop needing closure from them. You stop needing them to apologize or explain. You stop needing them to change in order for you to feel okay. That's freedom. Because now your peace doesn't depend on how someone else chooses to behave. It comes from the way you choose to interpret and respond. So when someone talks down to you, ignores you, or tries to make you feel small, remember, that's their mirror, not your truth. You don't have to carry their reflection as your identity. You don't have to dim your light just because someone else can't handle your brightness. You can walk away not to prove a point, but to protect your value. Every time you refuse to take someone else's poor behavior personally, you reclaim your power. You keep your emotions aligned with your truth, not their dysfunction. That's not weakness. That's emotional strength. And the more you practice it, the less bothered you'll be by things that once consumed your peace. Let people reveal who they are. Detachment often gets misunderstood. People think it means shutting down, not caring, or turning cold. But real detachment isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about creating space between your peace and other people's chaos. It's the ability to be present without being pulled. It's knowing how to stay grounded when someone else is spiraling. And it's one of the strongest things you can learn, because the truth is, you can care deeply about someone without carrying the emotional weight of their behavior. You can listen to someone vent, struggle, or even attack, and still not lose your calm. You see, detachment isn't about apathy. It's about boundaries. It's about understanding that you are responsible for your own emotions, just like others are responsible for theirs. When you become overly attached to outcomes, people's approval, or someone else's mood, you give away your emotional power. You make their inner world responsible for your inner peace. And that's a dangerous trade-off. Detachment teaches you that your job isn't to fix everyone. Your job is not to make people happy at the cost of your own happiness. Your job isn't to absorb their anxiety, anger, or stress as your own. You're not a sponge. You're a person, and you deserve the emotional freedom to stand in your own energy, even when others can't find theirs. When you practice detachment, you learn how to observe instead of react. You learn how to listen without trying to control or correct. And most importantly, you learn how to love without losing yourself in the process. You can show compassion without co-signing someone's drama. You can offer support without sacrificing your sanity. That's not cold, that's clarity. Some people will misunderstand your detachment. They'll say you're distant or uncaring, especially if they're used to you overextending yourself. Let them. You're not here to convince people that your boundaries are valid. You're here to live in alignment with them. And the ones who truly value you won't demand your emotional exhaustion as proof of your loyalty. Detachment also allows you to stay calm in emotionally charged situations. Instead of matching someone else's intensity, you hold your center. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You don't rise and fall with their temperature. You set the tone. That kind of emotional leadership is powerful. It's steady. It's unshakable. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, remember this. You can care without carrying. You can be empathetic without being engulfed. You can be present without being pulled under. That's detachment. And it's not a sign of disrespect. It's a sign of deep respect for yourself, for your energy, for your peace. You're not choosing distance out of bitterness. You're choosing space out of wisdom. And that space, that's where your calm lives. That's where your clarity speaks. And that's where your strength grows. Keep it, guard it, and never apologize for protecting your emotional well-being. When tension rises, when voices get louder, when someone pushes your buttons, the easiest thing in the world is to react, to fire back, to match energy. But that's not power. That's impulse. Real strength is quieter. It doesn't scream to be heard. It doesn't rush to respond. It holds steady, even in chaos. Responding with clarity instead of emotion isn't weakness. It's evidence that you're in control of yourself, not controlled by the situation. Calm isn't passive, it's precise. It allows you to see through the noise and get to the truth of what's actually happening. When you're clear, you're no longer reacting out of defense or ego. You're not trying to prove anything. You're choosing your words with intention, not just volume. In that moment, you're not trying to win the argument. You're trying to own your presence. And there's a big difference. Think about it. Anyone can react. That's easy. But to pause, breathe, and respond with clarity, that takes emotional discipline. It means you're not giving someone else the power to dictate your state of mind. You've decided that your peace is non-negotiable, even in uncomfortable situations. That kind of calm unsettles people who expect to pull you into drama. And that's okay. Your job isn't to meet chaos with chaos. Your job is to bring clarity, and let that be your power. Clarity also creates better outcomes. When you speak from a calm place, people are more likely to actually listen. The conversation becomes constructive, not destructive. You get heard not because you were louder, but because you were grounded. People remember how you made them feel. And when you lead with calm, you create safety, not tension. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. You can still express yourself, stand your ground, and say what needs to be said. But you're doing it from a place of composure, not emotional overflow. There's a difference between speaking your truth and throwing your emotions at someone. The first builds connection, the second builds walls. And yes, there will be moments when your calm is tested, when people are disrespectful, dismissive, or even cruel. That's when clarity becomes even more important. Not because they deserve your calm, but because you deserve your dignity. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes the most powerful response is a simple, measured one. Other times, it's silence. When you respond with clarity instead of chaos, you don't just change the conversation. You change the energy. You remind people and yourself that peace is your default, not just a mood. And if they can't meet you there, you still walk away whole. So the next time you feel that pull to react, to raise your voice, to get even, choose clarity, choose calm. Not because you're weak, but because you've learned the strength in restraint. Because being grounded doesn't make you smaller, it makes you untouchable. When you master the art of not letting others control your emotions, you take back something priceless, your power. You begin to live from a place of intention instead of reaction. You realize that anger is just a signal, not a sentence. That the pause between stimulus and response is where your strength lives. That protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's essential. That people's behavior is a reflection of them, not a definition of you. That detachment isn't cold, it's clarity. And that calm, measured responses will always speak louder than chaos ever could. Emotional control isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. It's about choosing who you want to be, even when it's hardest to do so. The more you practice these principles, the less you'll find yourself triggered, bothered, or pulled into unnecessary battles. You'll stop reacting out of habit and start responding with wisdom. And that shift, it will change your life. So protect your peace, pause before you push back, and always respond from a place of calm strength. That's how you rise, that's how you lead, and that's how you never let anyone steal your power again. Thank you for listening.